But let's turn our attention for a moment to the most of unreasonable expectations of Joe Biden. And it's not even that it's the expectation is unreasonable, although it is. It's also that when you are faced with 400,000 Americans dead, when you are faced yesterday on Inauguration Day, over 4,000 Americans died of COVID. When you are faced with, we had, again, over 900,000 new unemployment claims announced today. Every week that has passed since the beginning of this epidemic, the number of jobless claims has been higher than at any other period in our history, starting in 1967, where they started to measure these unemployment claims at that time. So through the Great Recession, we are a country in deep, deep material crisis. There's an epidemic. People are dying. People are losing their jobs. People can't pay for food. We have massive food lines. And one of the sort of, I guess, slight criticisms we had, although this is an important function for the president, I can understand that about yesterday, was that there was a lot of soaring rhetoric, a lot of metaphor. I don't want to say pablum, but there was stuff in there that was really just to make us feel good and feel some type of sense that our democracy is safe. I think that's a legitimate
Old school
function.
Patriotism of politics of like 30, 40 years ago.
But I think, there's a certain role for the president to play, but the press should be better, and they're not. Here is CNN. Here's Jim Sciutto. This is a CNN anchor calling out to the president. This is really the least relevant question as to what Joe Biden needs to get done with all of those challenges that I just enumerated.
Mr. President, can you unite the country? It's quite a moment, Jake, because this is something we did not know we would see today, given the security.
You know, if I had a moment to ask Joe Biden, the incoming president, something, might not be that, especially because that's the only thing Joe Biden talks about. I mean, not the only thing, but his number one talking point, number one piece of rhetoric is unity, unity. I'm going to unite. I'm not going to divide. Unity, unity. Not really at the top of my mind, not a burning question. Are you focused on unity, Joe Biden? Pretty sure he is.
Well, and the funny thing is that, it's one thing for Joe Biden to call for unity of the American people, but the idea that Joe Biden can unite people, this just came out in the Washington Post today. Over 70% of Republicans said they agreed with President Trump's contention. This is a study that was done with 2,600 registered voters. It was done about 2 or 3 weeks ago. Over 70% of Republicans said they agreed with President Trump's contention that he received more votes than Joe Biden. And this is across the board with the Republicans. It's not a non-college educated Republican. It was across the board with Republicans. They gave them 3 statements, all false. 1, millions of fraudulent mail-in and absentee ballots were cast in this past election. 2, voting machines were manipulated to add tens of thousands of votes for Joe Biden. And 3, thousands of votes were recorded for dead people. Those were the statements they gave. And more than 50% of Republican respondents said it was very accurate. Those 3 false statements, 50%, over 50% said they were very accurate statements. Over 75% of Republicans either said they were very accurate statements or somewhat accurate statements. There is no unifying the country. I don't even know what that means in the sense that is everybody going to be on the same page? The answer is no. However, the one thing that I think if you were to ask them is it a bad thing to have 400,000 people dead? Is it a bad thing to have 4,000 people dying on that day of COVID? Is it a bad thing to have millions of Americans unemployed? Millions of Americans in food lines? I think the answer is probably yes. And then I think the real question that the press should be asking, the media should be asking is, what are you going to do to fix that? Period. End of story. However,
I mean, the question, just quickly, the question should be, how are you going to unify the country? How are you going to do it? I mean, my view is you increase people's material well-being because people are really hurting right now. But that doesn't need to be CNN's question there. It shouldn't be, are you going to unite the country? I mean, Biden could just go, yeah. All right. End of story. End of question.
And to be fair,
journalism?
it's not just CNN that's obsessed with that question. Here's Ainsley Earhart on Fox News, and she feels that it's going to be very disunifying if Joe Biden does anything as president.
So our country's got to come together. And Joe Biden said yesterday, I want unity. He talked about that in his speech. But the first thing he does, the first order of business, is to walk in, sit down at the table, and he has 17 executive orders, really wiping away much of what President Trump did. So his supporters are saying, how can we have unity if you're taking away everything that we like?
Pause it for 1 second. The first one that they put up there is that you've got to wear a mask in federal buildings.
Yeah.
How tyrannical.
That critique would be in a bit of better faith if Trump hadn't just barged into the White House 4 years later and ripped up everything that had Obama's scent on it, or anything Obama touched, tried to set it on fire. Ridiculous.
Continue to play with, we gotta play that clip.
You're taking away everything that we like.
You have those scrolling across your
COVID
screen right now, those 17 executive orders. There's too many to list off, but we can just highlight a few. Ending President Trump's 1776 commission, rejoining the World Health Organization. Of course, there was a lot of criticism for who,
Keystone is the one they're mad at,
of COVID across this world. Rejoin the Paris Climate Agreement, and many, many more. Speaking of the Paris Climate Agreement, there is, of course, this push to rejoin the world's effort to battle climate change. Joe Biden is making it one of the first things he wants to do in his administration. Well, Mark Morano, he's executive editor of ClimateDepot.com.
Okay, we don't need to see any more of that.
It's like a highlight reel.
Yeah, I know. And I like how what they extend the eviction moratorium until September. That was one of the things on that scroll.
So
that
disunifying.
Was Trump's policy. That was Trump's policy, but it's disunifying for him to extend it. It's disunifying for me, or it's irritating to me that he's not going further than that. And still has not made an effort quite yet to cancel any cent of student debt. So that's
all right. We got to take a break. When we come back, we'll be talking to David Dane, executive editor of the American Prospect, on all of these executive orders and much more. We'll be right back after this.